What's good, guys? It's Ilsun 4K, and allow me to welcome you to yet another episode of Found Footage Friday, the show on my channel where we review, well, obviously, found footage movies. And this is actually an interesting episode because today, while we are reviewing found footage, we're reviewing what seems to be a new offshoot of the genre, which is really interesting, called analog horror. Analog horror is something very unique and interesting, and I gotta tell you, this movie that we're going to review that's from that genre, The Smile Tapes, is definitely unlike anything I've ever seen before, and I've seen a lot of horror, okay? I mean, a lot of horror, and a lot of found footage. Now, what's really interesting about this genre is the fact that it's not completely new. It's been out for about 4 or 5 years, but when you think about horror, something that's only been out for 4 or 5 years is still pretty goddamn new when you consider that the slasher movie goes back to like the late 60s, early 70s. Furthermore, from there, what I find really fascinating about this video is it was actually recommended to me in the middle of one of my Twitch streams by someone who asked me, do I know what analog horror is? And I asked them, since they're from the United Kingdom or from England, I can't remember which one, they were like, yeah, no, it's not just the terminology we use over here to describe found footage. It's something on its own, and you should really check it out. You should watch The Smile Tapes. So lo and behold, me and Greg over here decided to go and sit and watch The Smile Tapes last night, and it completely blew me away because it's something that I couldn't explain if I had to in a short being. So I'm actually going to make this half of a review about The Smile Tapes and half an explanation of what analog horror is. And we are definitely going to be covering quite a bit of this in the future on this episode because it's just too cool and unique to ignore. So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you stick around as we review The Smile Tapes and I explain in short what analog horror is and why you should go and check it out. So, what is analog horror, you're going to ask, if you don't know already, and it seems like I'm a little late to the party on this, but analog horror seems like what would happen if found footage somehow collided with the creepypasta post of back in the day on 4chan or Reddit or wherever they were originated from, and it was shot in a really low fidelity, grainy type of style. And by low fidelity, I mean like when you used to see camcorder footage from the 1980s and 1990s for someone's like birthday party or the original TikTok, which we knew was America's Funniest Home Videos, and it's really just a story told in that style. Ironically, most of these videotapes are told from the era of 1960s to 1990s from what I've done the research of, and it seems also in the fact that they don't always have footage in them. Now, what do you mean by they don't always have footage in them? I mean, an example is the Smile Tapes. There isn't that much real-world footage in here at all, as in footage of other people. It's more of like a synopsis being explained over the course of this low-fidelity footage, because again, this takes place in 94, 95, and we see what appears to be, and can only be described as, these people who are stuck with this experimental phase of this fungus known as the Jester. What is the Jester? It's a black market drug that has come to light and is turning people into what you see here, these contorted faces. And we have the scientist who is explaining what is happening to these people over the course of a couple weeks. But again, we do not actually see footage of the scientists recording these people like you might imagine, or unfortunately hope if you're not into that type of style. It just shows us explanations of what's happening written in that 90s style camcorder font and explaining how the patients are becoming worse and worse and how their faces are contorting and how they're dying and how ultimately this fungus is actually a spreadable affair. And it's really interesting because at first it sounds like, how could you watch a horror movie that has no footage? But I gotta tell you, it was really, really enticing. I could not look away. We get to the next part where it shows someone who's basically infected with the virus talking over this, again, weird grainy style footage, explaining how their symptoms are going. Unfortunately, this person's dog has passed away and they're very depressed, and they started using this drug that was on the market. And they started feeling more and more like their faces hurt and they were contorting upward. And eventually it gets to a point where it's Christmas Day and they go and visit their family, and the family says they can't believe how happy they look, but of course it's because the fungus is making them smile. But again, this isn't something we're seeing. It's something that's being explained to us, and it almost allows you to create the picture in your head. It's almost like reading a book that's a horror movie. And it's really fascinating because eventually it gets to the point where this virus causes this person to go completely out of their mind and says that they're completely happy and they can't believe how beautiful the world is, and the writings become more and more cryptic and really fucking creepy. I mean, like, creepypasta status. Like, it really does seem like a creepypasta being told right before your eyes. And eventually this person decides that they're going to go out in the world and be the change they want to see. And on New Year's Eve, they go out and decide to kill a whole bunch of people and create what I believe is known as the Gomez murders. I can't remember the last name of this individual, but more or less, this becomes the breaking point where the news media starts noticing everything. And it goes from the storytelling of this individual over this digital diary to what appears to be a police synopsis brief being shared amongst law enforcement announcement about what happened that night, how many officers were injured, how many people were killed, and everything else that's just really, really convoluted, but is explained so clearly. And that's the one thing I have to give credit to. Despite the fact that what I'm saying sounds like one drawn-out, long run-on sentence, it's broken down into sections where it's very easy to digest, and you can't help but just want to see what's going to happen afterwards next. Now, what happens from here is, it turns out this turns into an epidemic. We're talking a nationwide epidemic, and we get some clear footage of something. And this is really clever, so make sure you check this out. We get clear footage of President Clinton, because remember, this takes place from Christmas Eve going into from 1994 Christmas Eve going into New Year's Day 1995. We get a deep fake footage, and remember, it's deep faked, of President Clinton talking about this virus and how it's a spreading epidemic. And it's actually, again, President Clinton, but again, his lip is being manipulated via the software that we all know today to talk about this. And they use the voice manipulation tactic to make it sound just like President Clinton, and it's so fucking badass. I mean, I loved it. It just made me want to watch it even more. Next up, we get more of a journal entry affair, where it seems that we have an individual who has been trapped inside of their apartment because the entire outside world has completely turned upside down, topsy-turvy. People have this infection inside of them that is just growing and expanding, because every time somebody dies, they release more spores out into the world that people breathe in and become affected. So again, it's really, really, really in-depth without actually showing us anything, and we actually do get a tiny bit of real-world footage here. We see this individual in their apartment, like I said, who has unfortunately run out of resources as the post-apocalyptic affair has told them to conserve their resources, but unfortunately this person has run out. So they decide they're going to go out into the real world, and we get some grainy, low-quality footage of this individual walking around. Whether it's them with a video camera or supposed to be a camera type of shot like we're filming a movie, you don't really get the clarity on that, but you don't need it, because eventually this person finds some food, but they run into one of these infected individuals, and we just see a brief encounter of them. Next, we cut to this individual running away, going into the streets, trying to get back to their apartment, being chased by one of these laughers, as he calls them, I believe. And the whole time he's running around, all we hear is the sound of fires burning and people laughing, because this virus just makes you laugh non-stop. Eventually, the individual gets back to his apartment and is chased by this, and he defends himself using an aerosol can and a lighter, which is pretty smart when you think about it, because this person is low on resources and most likely doesn't have any other weaponry that could really stand a chance against these infected individuals. We then cut to an interview with a woman who apparently gets infected by this virus, but is completely unaffected and doesn't even spread it contagiously, meaning she's immune, more or less the only one who might be a shed of hope for mankind to fix this. And they talk to her in an audio interview now. It's an audio affair, still with no words, asking this woman how she feels, what's it like, does she have any symptoms, and they just go on and on trying to figure out how they could use this woman's immune system to create a cure for the virus. Now, the ending to this I won't spoil because it's really interesting and really unique, and the visuals are actually of a real world footage in a low grainy quality, and I don't want to spoil it for you. But again, this is something that I really think you need to see to believe, because if you're looking for something new and interesting in horror, this is for you. I will say though, however, just like found footage isn't for everybody, this might not be for you. But I'm telling you, for the 48 minutes that it takes to watch this, and I'll put the link down below because it's completely free to watch on YouTube, as is most of this genre, I think you should give it a go and try to get at least to the halfway point and see how you feel about it, because again, it's really fascinating. I'm not gonna lie, I can't wait to watch more of it, even if it's in this style. Now, of course, the ultimate question here is that everyone's asking that doesn't know is analog horror any good? In my opinion, yes. Analog horror is actually great. As a matter of fact, a great example of analog horror that has blown up and gotten a lot of traction, including a few video game releases on Steam, is The Backrooms. Yes, if you've seen The Backrooms, you probably already know what analog horror is, but if you have seen The Backrooms and were unaware of what it is, that is a great example of analog horror that actually has footage in it, unlike the Smile tapes, which is more text-based. And what's even crazier is that horror movie A24, yes, A24 has picked up the rights to that movie and will be making a theatrical release out of it, which is really saying a lot. I gotta say, the really interesting thing about this is how many movies are out there that seem to have been under the radar, and now that I'm looking for them, I can't wait to watch them. A great example is a movie called The Mandela Catalog, which seems to be a found footage affair that takes place in a town where people are getting cloned and killed, and it was made by a 20-year-old named Alex Kister, and it has gotten great traction due to YouTube reaction videos and reviews, much like this video right here. I am really excited to see what else is going on here. If you're into found footage at all, you should absolutely check this out, because you gotta figure, these are people really doing what the essence of horror is about. And by that, I mean, you gotta figure, once upon a time, someone like Wes Craven came up with the idea for Freddy Krueger and wrote out a script and shopped that script out to Hollywood, and Hollywood looked at it and said, yeah, sure, we'll give you the money for it. It doesn't work like that anymore. Let's take a look, not to get too off topic, at something like Terrifier, Art the Clown. Art the Clown first showed up as a random character in a 2008 film called The Ninth Circle, and then from there, it was created into a 20-minute affair known as the Terrifier 2011 short film, which I've reviewed on this channel, which you can check in the link below. And from there, it became in All Hallows Eve as a short, and then from there it became Terrifier 1, and Terrifier 2 came out, and now it's gotten to the point where Terrifier 3, unlike the past videos, doesn't need any crowdfunding on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. All those previous ones were put out. Hollywood wants to see a proven idea here, and the fact that found footage films have always been kind of in the offshoot of that makes it even more interesting in the fact that this is an offshoot of found footage films. I think it's really fascinating to see the fact that people are just going out there and making their own horror movies in a way that's never been imagined before. And while most of these films will never see 1/10 of the success that Terrifier has, one cannot deny that they are taking, without being insulting to the creators, the lowest common denominator of horror. A guy with a camcorder and an idea and some computer editing software and making some truly scary shit. And in my opinion, like I said, that's what the essence of horror is all about. A scary idea coming to life in any way, shape, or form. And things have changed in how you can make that idea come to life. As I said, Hollywood isn't just handing out money anymore. They want proof of concept. And most of these videos will never go beyond being anything but a YouTube channel video that gets a whole bunch of hype, and that's fine, because we need stuff like this. We need that under the underground stuff to keep the horror movement alive, because it can't be all high budget, high gloss, crazy special effects affairs out there. We need it to go back to where it came from, just to remind us of how cool it all really can be on all levels. And don't forget, go and check out my Twitch on twitch.tv/ILTV4K, where we do horror gaming every so often. I'm still working on a schedule, so that's why you should like and follow there and here, so that way when it finally does come up, you'll be ready with a notification. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my review of the Smile Tapes, and that is also my take on analog horror and why you should look into it if you're even remotely into the genres that I've mentioned. And don't forget, you're watching ILTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here. You're watching ILTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here.